Chapter 15. Aragog. Summer was creeping over the grounds around the castle. Sky and lake turned periwinkle blue, and flowers large as cabbage burst into bloom in the greenhouse. But with no Hagrid visible from the castle window, striding the ground with Fang at his heels, the scenes didn't look right to Harry. No better, in fact, than the inside of the castle, where things were so horribly wrong. Harry Ron had tried to visit Harmony, but visitors were not barred from the hospital week. We are taking no more chance, Madame Pomfrey told them severally through a crack in the infirmary door. No, I'm sorry, there every chance the attacker might come to back to finish these people off. With Dumbledore gone, fear and spread as never before. So that the sun warned me, the castle wall outside seemed to stop at the mullioned window. There was barely a face to be seen in the school that didn't look worried and tense, and any laughter that rang through the corridor sounded shrill and unnatural and was quickly stifled. Harry constantly repeated Dumbledore's final word to himself. I will only to have left this school when none here are loyal to me. Help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it. But what good were those words? Who exactly were they supposed to ask for help when everyone was just as confused as scared as they were? Hagrid hint about the spider was far easier to understand. The trouble was there didn't seem to be a single spider left in the castle to follow. He looked everywhere he wanted, help rather reluctant by Ron. They were hampered, of course, by the fact that they weren't allowed to wander off on their own but had to move around the castle in pack with other Gryffindors. Most of their fellow students seemed glad that they were being separated from the class by teachers, but Harry found it very calm. One person, however, seemed to be truly enjoying the atmosphere of terror and suspicion. Draco Malfoy was strutting around the school as though he had just been appointed head boy. Harry didn't realize what he was so pleased about until the potion lesson about 2 weeks after Dumbledore and Hagrid had left. When sitting right behind Malfoy, Harry overheard him gloating to Crabbe and Goyle. I always thought father might be the one who got rid of Dumbledore, he said, not troubling to keep his voice down. I told you, he thinks Dumbledore's the worst headmaster the school ever had. Maybe we'll get a decent headmaster now, someone who won't the Chamber of Secret close. McGonagall won't last long, she'll only filing in. Snape swept past Harry, making no comment about Hermione's empty seat, and called Ron. Sir, said Malfoy loudly, Sir, why don't you apply for the headmaster's job now? Now, Malfoy, said Snape through he couldn't spread a thin-lipped smile. Professor Dumbledore had only been suspended by the governor. Ideally, he'll be back with as soon as enough. Yeah, right, said Malfoy, smirking. I expect you had have father's vote, sir. If you wanted to apply for the job, I'll tell father you are the best teacher here, sir. Snape smirked as he swept off around the divan, fortunately not spotting Seamus Finnegan, who was pretending to vomit in his cauldron. I'm quite surprised. The Mudblood have all packed their bags by now, Malfoy went on. But you 5 gallon, the next one dies, pity it wasn't Granger. The bell rang at that moment, which was lucky. At Malfoy's last word, Ron had leapt off his stool, and in the scramble to collect bags and books, his attempt to reach Malfoy went unnoticed. Let me at him, Ron growled as Harry and Dean hung onto his arm. I don't care. I don't need my wand. I'm going to kill him with my bare hand. Hurry up. I have got to take you all to herbology. Barked Snape over the glass head, and off they marched with Harry, Ron, and Dean bringing up the rear. Ron still trying to get loose. It was only safe to let go of him when Snape had been them out of the castle, and they were making their way across the vegetable patch towards the greenhouse. The herbology class was very subdued. There were now two missing from their number, Justin and Hermione. Professor Sprout set them all to work ruining the Abyssinian shriveled. Harry went to tip an armful of withered stalk onto the compost heap and found himself face to face with Annie McMillan. Annie took a deep breath and said very formally, I just want to say, Harry, that I'm sorry I ever suspected you. I know you had never attacked Hermione Granger, and I apologized for all the stuff I said. We're all in the same boat now, and will he held out a pudgy hand and Harry shook it. Ernie and his friend Han came to work at the same stifling as Harry and Ron. The Draco Malfoy character, said Ernie, breaking off dead drink, seemed very pleased about all this, doesn't he? Do you know? I think he might be Slytherin's hire. That's clever of you, said Ron, who didn't seem to have forgive Ernie as ready as Harry. Do you think it's Malfoy, Harry? Ernie asked. No, said Harry, so firmly that Ernie and Hans stared. A second later, Harry spotted something. Several large spiders were scuttling over the ground on the other side of the glass, moving in an unnatural straight line as though taking the shortest route to prearranged meeting. Harry hit Ron overhand with his pruning sword. Ouch! What are you? Harry pointed out the spider, following their progress with his eyes screwed up against the sun. Oh, yeah, said Ron, trying and failing to look pleased, but we can't follow them now. Ernie and Han were listening curiously. Harry's eyes narrowed as he focused on the spider. If they pursued their fixed course, there could be no doubt about where they would end up. Look like they are heading for the Forbidden Forest, said Ron, looked even unhappier about that. At the end of the lesson, Professor Sprout escorted the class to their defense against art class. Harry and Ron lagged behind the others so they could talk out earshot. We'll have to use the invisibility cloak again, Harry told Ron. We can take Fang with us. He is used to going into the forest with Hagrid. He might be some help. Right, said Ron, who was twirling his wand nervously in his finger. Aren't there supposed to be werewolves in the forest? He added as they took their usual place at the place of Lockhart's classroom. Preferring not to answer that question, Harry said, there are good things in there too. The creatures are alright, and the unicorn. Ron had never been into the Forbidden Forest before. Harry had entered it only once and had hoped never to do so again. Lockhart bounded into the room and class stared at him. Every other teacher in the place was looking grimmer than usual, but Lockhart appeared nothing short of buoyant. Come now, he cried, beaming around him. Why all this long face? People swapped exasperated looks, but nobody answered. Don't you people realize, said Lockhart, speaking loud slowly, as though they were all a bit dim. The danger has passed. The culprit has been taken away. Say who? Said Dean Thomas loudly. My dear young man, the Ministry of Magic wouldn't have taken Hagrid if he hadn't been 100% sure that he was guilty, said Lockhart in the tone of someone explaining that one and one made two. Oh, yeah, he would, said Ron, even more loudly than Dean. I flattered myself. I know a touch more about Hagrid's stress than you. To Mr. Weasley, said Lockhart in a self-satisfied tone. Ron started to say that he didn't think so, somehow, but stopped in mid-sentence when Harry kicked him hard to the desk. We weren't there, remember? Harry muttered. But Lockhart's distinguished cheering, his hint that he had always thought Hagrid was no good, his confidence that the whole business was now at the end, irritated Harry so much that he yearned to throw padding with gold right in Lockhart's stupid face. Instead, the content himself with scrawling a note on Ron. Let's do tonight. Ron read the message, swallowed hard, looked sideways. At the empty seat, usually filled by Harmony, the sight seemed to stiffen his resolve, and he nodded. The Gryffindor common room was always very crowded this day, because from 6 o'clock onward, the Gryffindor had nowhere else to go. They also had plenty to talk about, with the result that the common room often didn't empty until past midnight. Harry went to get the invisibility clock out of his trunk right after dinner and spent the evening sitting on it, waiting for the room to clear. Fred and George challenged Harry and Ron to a few games of exploding Snape, and Ginny sat watching them, very subdued in Hermione's usual chair. Harry and Ron kept losing on purpose, trying to finish the game quickly, but even so, it was well past midnight when Fred and George and Ginny finally went to bed. Harry and Ron waited for the distant sound of two dormitories' door closing before seizing the clock, throwing it over themselves, and climbing through the portrait hole. It was another difficult journey through the castle, dogging all the teacher. At last, they reached the Serena entrance hall, slipped back the lock on the oak front door, squeezed between them, trying to stop any cracking, and stepped out into the moonlight ground. Horse, said Ron abruptly as they strode across the black grass. We might get to the forest and find there nothing to follow, though Spider might not have been keep going there at all. I know it looked like they were moving in the sort of general direction, but his voice trailed away hopefully. They reached Hagrid house and Saris looking with its blank window. When Harry pushed the door open, Frank went mad with joy at the sight of them, worried he might wake everyone at the castle with his deep booming bark. His style fed him treacle toffee from a tin on the mantelpiece, which glued his teeth together. Harry left the invisibility clock on Hagrid's table. There would be no need for it in the pitch dark forest. Come on, Fang, we are going for a walk, said Harry, patting his leg, and Fang bounded happily out of the house behind them, dashed to the edge of the forest, and lifted his leg against a large sycamore tree. Harry looked out his wand, murmured Lumus, and a tiny light appeared at the end of it, just enough to let them watch the path for sign of spiders. Good thinking, said Ron. I had light mine too, but it had probably blown up or something. Harry tapped Ron on the shoulder, pointing at the grass. Two solitary spiders were hurrying away from the wand light into the shade of the tree. Okay, Ron signed as though resigned to the worst. I'm ready, let's go. So the fangs scampering around them, sniffing tree root and leaves, they entered the forest. By the glow of Harry's wand, they followed the steady trickle of spider moving along the path. They walked behind them for about 20 minutes, not speaking, listening hard for noise other than breaking twig and rustling leaves. Then, when the tree had become thicker than ever, so that the stars overhead were no longer visible, and Harry's wand shone alone in the sea of dark, they saw their spider guide leaving the path. Harry paused, trying to see where the spiders were going, but everything outside his little sphere of light was pitch black. He had never been this deep into the forest before. He could vividly remember Hagrid advising him not to leave the forest path last time he had been in here, but Hagrid was miles away now, probably sitting in the cell of Azkaban, and he had also said to follow the spider. Something wet touched Harry's hand, and he jumped backward, rushing Ron's foot, but it was only Fang's nose. What do you reckon? Harry, said Ron, whose nose he could just make out, reflecting the light from his wand. We have come this far, said Ron. So they followed the darting shadow of the spider into the tree. They couldn't move very quickly now. They were tree roots and stump in their way, barely visible in near backlash. Harry could feel Fang's hot breath on his wand more than once. They had to stop so that Harry could crouch down and find the spider in the wand light. They walked for what seemed like at last half an hour, their robes snagging on low slung branches and brambles. After a while, they noticed that the ground seemed to be sloping downward through the tree were as thick as ever. Then Fang suddenly let loose a great encouraging bark, making both Harry and Ron jump out of the seer skin. What? Said Ron loudly, looking around into the pitch dark and gripping Harry's elbow very hard. There is something moving over there. Harry breathed. Listen. Sound like something big. They listen. Some distance to their right, the something big was snapping branches as it carved a path through the tree. Oh no, said Ron. Oh no, shut up, said Harry frantically. It will hear you. Hear me? Said Ron in an unnatural high voice. It's already heard Fang. The darkness seemed to be pressing on their elbow as they stood terrified, waiting. There was a strange rumbling noise and then silence. What do you think it's doing? Said Harry, probably getting ready to pounce, said Ron. They waited shiveringly, hardly daring to move. Do you think it's gone? Harry whispered. Don't know. Then, to their right, came a sudden blaze of light, so bright in darkness that both of them flung up their head to shield their eyes. Fang yelped and tried to run, but got locked in a tangle of thorns and yelped even louder. Harry, Ron shouted, his voice breaking with relief. Harry, it's our car. What? Come on. Harry blurted after Ron toward the light, stumbling and tripping, and a moment later they had emerged into a clearing. Mr. Weasley's car was standing empty in the middle of a circle of thick trees under a roof of dense branch, its headlights ablaze as Ron walked, open-mouthed, toward it. It moved slowly toward him, exactly like a large, tall-curious dog greeting its owner. It's been here all the time, said Ron, delightedly, walking around the car, looked at it. The forest turned it wild. The side of the car were scratched and smeared with mud. Apparently, it had taken to trudging around the forest on its own. And didn't seem at all keen on it. He kept closing to Harry, who could feel him quaveringly, his breathing slowly down again. Harry stuffed his wand back into his robe, and we thought it was going to attack us, said Ron, leaning against the car and patting it. I wonder where it had gone. Harry squinted around on the floor till ground for sign or more spider, but they had all scuttled away from the glare of headlight. We have lost the trail, he said. Come on, let's go and find them. Ron didn't speak. He didn't move. His eyes were fixed on a point some 10 feet above the forest floor right behind Harry. His face was livid with terror. Harry didn't even have time to turn around. There was a loud clicking noise, and suddenly he felt something long and hairy seize him around the middle of lift him off the ground so that he was hanging face down, struggling terrified. He heard more clicking and saw Ron's leg leave the ground too. Heard Fang whimpering and howling. Next moment he was being swept away into the dark tree. Head hanging, Harry saw that what had holding on him was marching of six immensely long hairy legs, the front two clutching him tightly below the pair of shining black pierces. Behind him he could hear another of creature, no doubt carrying on. They were moving into the very heart of the forest. Harry could hear Fang fighting to free himself from a third monster, winning loudly, but Harry couldn't have yelled even if he had wanted to. He seemed to have left his voice back with the cat in the clearing. He never knew how long he was in the creature's clutch. He only knew what he did. Darkness suddenly lifted enough for him to see that the lift-strewed ground was now swamping with spiders. Craning his neck sideways, he realized that they had reached the ridge, a vast hollow, a hollow that had been cleared of tree so that the stars shone brightly onto the lower scene. Even had ever lied on spider, not tiny spider like those surging over the leaves below, spider the size of Cathro's right-eyed, eight-legged, hairy, gigantic, massive specimen that was carrying Harry made its way down the steep slope towards the misty dome, web in the very center of the hollow, while it fellow closed in all around it, clicking their piercing. Excitedly at the sight of its sword, Harry fell to the ground on the wall for as the spider released him. Ron and Fang huddled down next to him. Fang wasn't holding anymore but covering silently on the spot. Ron looked exactly like Harry felt. His mouth was stretched wide in the kind of silent scream and his eyes were popping. Harry suddenly realized that the spider that had dropped him was saying something. It had been hard to tell because he clicked his piercing with every word he spoke. Aragog, it called Aragog. And from the middle of the misty, doomed web, a spider the size of a small elephant emerged. Very slowly, there was a grey inner the black of his body and leg, and each of the eye on his ugly pincers head was milky white. He was blind. What it is? He said, clicking his pincers rapidly. Men clicked the spider who had caught Harry. Is it Hagrid? Said Aragog, moving closer, his yet milky eye wandering vaguely. Strangers clicked the spider who had brought Ron. Kill them, clicked Aragog furtively. I was sleeping. We are friends of Hagrid. Harry shouted. His heart seemed to have left his chest to pound in his throat. Click, click, went the pincers of the spider all around the hollow. Aragog paused. Hagrid has never sent me into our hollow before, he said slowly. Hagrid in trouble, said Harry, breathing very fast. That's why we are come here. In trouble, said the aged spider, and Harry thought he heard concern beneath the clicking pierce. But why has he sent you? Harry thought of getting to his feet but decided against it. He didn't think his leg would support him, so he spoke from the ground as calmly as he could. They think up at the school that Hagrid been setting a spying on student. They have taken him to Azkaban. Aragog clicked his piercing furiously, and all around the hollow, the sound was echoed by the crowd of spiders. It was like applause, except applause didn't usually make Harry feel sick with fear, but that was a year ago. Said Aragog thoughtfully, year and year ago. I remember it well. That's why they made him leave the school. They believed that I was the monster that dwelt in what they call the Chamber of Secret. They thought that Hagrid had opened the chamber and set me free. And you don't come from the Chamber of Secret, said Harry, who could feel cold sweat on his forehead. I said, Aragog clicked angrily. I was not born in the castle. I came from a distant land. A traveler gave me to Hagrid when I was a egg. Hagrid was only boy, but he cared to me. Hidden in a cupboard in the castle, feeding me on the scrap from the table. Hagrid is my good friend and a good man. When I was discovered and blamed for the death of a girl, he protected me. I lived here in the forest ever since, where Hagrid still visits me. He even found me a wife, Mosag, and you see how our family has grown. Although Hagrid's goodness, Harry summoned what remained of his courage. So you never attacked anyone, never, croaked the old spider. It would have been my instinct, but out of respect of Hagrid, I never harmed a human. The body of a girl who was killed was discovered in a bathroom. I never saw any part of the castle but the cupboard in which I grew up. Are kind like the dark and the quiet. But then, do you know what did kill that girl? Said Harry, because whatever it is, it's Bala and attacking people again. His words were drawn by the loud outbreak of clicking and the rustling of many long legs shifting angrily. Large black shapes shifted all around him. The thing that lived in the castle, said Aragog, in an ancient creature which spider fear above all other. Do you remember how I pleaded with Hagrid to let me go when I sensed the beast moving about the school? What is it? Said Harry urgently. More loud clicking, more rustling. The spider seemed to be closing in. We do not speak of it, said Aragog fiercely. We do not name it. I never even told Hagrid the name of what dread creature through he asked me many times. He didn't want to press the subject, not with the spider pressing closer all on all sides. Aragog seemed too tired of walking. He was backing slow into the dome web, but his fellow spider continued to inch slowly toward Harry and Ron. We'll just go then, Harry called desperately to Aragog, hearing living rustling behind him. Go, said Aragog slowly. I think not. But my son and daughters do not have Hagrid on my command, but I cannot deny them fresh meat when it wandered so willingly into our midst. My friends Hagrid, Harry spun around, feet wet towering. Below him was a solid wall of spiders, clicking their many eyes glamoring in their ugly black heads. Even as he reached for his wand, Harry knew it was no good. There were too many of them, but as he tried to seem ready to die, frightened, a loud, long note sounded and a blaze of light flamed through the yellow. Mr. Weasley's car was thundering down the slope, headlight glared in horn, searching, knocking spider aside. Several were thrown onto their backs, their endless legs waving in the air. The car screeched to halt in front of the Harry and Ron, and the door flew open. Get Fang, Harry yelled, diving into the front seat. Ron seized the bear hound around the middle and threw him. Yelping into the back of the car, the door slammed shut. Ron didn't touch the accelerator, but the car didn't need him. The engine roared and they were off, hitting more spiders. They sped up and sloped out of the hollow, and they were soon crashing through the forest branches, sweeping the window as the car wound its way cleverly through the widest gap. Follow a path it's obviously new. Harry looked sideways at Ron. His mouth was still open in the silent scream, but his eyes weren't popping anyway. Are you okay? Ron stared straight ahead, unable to speak. They smashed their way through the undergrowth, Fang howling loudly in the back seat, and Harry saw the side mirror snap off as they squeezed past a large oak. After 10 noisy, rocky minutes, the trees timed, and Harry could see a patch of sky. The car stopped as so suddenly that they were nearly thrown into the white shell. They had reached the edge of the forest. Fang flung himself at the window in his anxiety to get out, and when Harry opened the door, he shot off through the trees to Hagrid's house. Tail between his legs, Harry got out too, and after a minute or so, Ron seemed to regain the feeling of his limbs and follow, still stiff-necked and staring. Harry gave the car a graceful pat as it reversed back into the forest and disappeared from view. Harry went back into Hagrid's cabin to get an the invisibility cloak. Fang was trembling under a blanket in the basket. When Harry got outside again, he found Ron being violently sick in the pumpkin patch. Follow the spiders, said Ron weakly, wiping his mouth on his sleeve. I'll never forgive Hagrid. They are lucky to live. I bet he thought Aragog wouldn't hurt friends of his, said Harry. That's exactly Hagrid's problem, said Ron, thumping the wall of the cabin. He always thinks monsters aren't as bad as they are made out, and look where it's got him, a cell in Azkaban. He was shivering uncontrollably now. What was the point of sending us in there? What have we found out? I'd like to know. That Hagrid never opened the chamber of secrets, said Harry, throwing the cloak over Ron and prodding him in the arm to make him walk. He was innocent. Ron gave a loud snort, evidently hatching Aragog in the cupboard. Wasn't it the idea of being innocent? As the castle loomed nearer, Harry twitched the clock to make sure their feet are hidden, then pushed the creaking front door jar. They walked carefully back across the entrance hall and up the marble staircase, holding their breath as they passed corridor where watchful sentries were walking. At last they reached the safety of Gryffindor's common room where the fire had burned itself into glowing ash. They took off the cloak and climbed the winding stair to their dormitories. Ron fell onto his bed without bothering to get under dress. Harry, however, didn't feel very sleepy. He sat on the edge of his poster, thinking hard about anything Aragog had said. The creature that had lurking somewhere in the castle, he thought sounded like a sort of monster Voldemort, even other monsters didn't want to be named it. But he and Ron were no closer to finding out what it was or how it petrified its victim. Even Hagrid had never known what was in the Chamber of Secret. Harry swung his leg up onto his bed and leaned back against his pillow, watching the moon glinting at him through the tower window. He couldn't see what else they could see. They had hid radiant everywhere. Riddle had caught the wrong person. The higher of Slytherin had got off, and no one could tell whether it was the same person or a different one who had opened the chamber this time. There was nobody else to ask. Harry lay down, still thinking about what Aragog said. He was becoming drowsy when that seemed like their very last hope occurred to him and suddenly sat bolt upright. When he hissed through the dark room, Ron woke with a yelp, like fangs started wildly around, and saw Harry. Ron, that girl who died, Aragog said she was